Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to chaos. Because that's what we're living in right now. Absolute fucking chaos. Organized and orchestrated chaos. Well, I guess that's redundant. Orchestrated and organized. Should have just said orchestrating. That's the problem with improvisation. Sometimes the improvisations will be wrong. Okay. Welcome back to the show. It's been a minute. I've been fighting my chronic health issues as well as demons. Not personal or interior demons, but real world external demons, and uh, and they're a pain in the ass, man. You can only defeat them with Christ. You can only defeat them with God. That's why my hair is crazy, because this is what your hair looks like after a tussle with demons, folks. You got to keep punching them and keep using the holy water. Well, no, that's Catholic, and we all know the Vatican's run by demons, right? So what's the point? Who am I? What do I do? I wear many hats. I do many things, but ultimately, I'm a writer and a seeker of truth, a purveyor of comedy at times, and a purveyor of deep thoughts on the philosophical, existential, supernatural phenomenon, the world of the conspiracy of our time. You might have heard of it, a little thing called the Matrix, the Babylonian Matrix, the black magic Babylonian money system. It's really a million things, but it's all summed up cleanly in the word Matrix, because that's what it is. It's a false paradigm. It's an illusion draped over nature and reality itself. And as somebody who been has bared witness to many supernatural encounters personally, and who has also researched a lot of that, and from my religious perspective or spiritual perspective, or however you want to say that, as well as listening to all the other different perceptions as much as one can, to the best of my abilities, I think it's fair for me to at least toss in my 2 cents, and that's ultimately what I aim to do with my solo show here. I already realize that X amount of people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm whatever, a hack. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not about, it's like when you listen to anybody, which is what I think everybody should do, is listen to everybody. Don't trust anyone, including me. Question everything, do your own research, all that kind of stuff. So that should be a given with that. I'm just one story. Um, a true story, but I'm just one story, right? Um, but there's also millions of others who have very similar overlaps. To me, that's where it gets interesting. It's one thing to say, oh, well, people, it's the same recurring archetype, you see, because of it's a human, inevitability or whatever. But when people who don't know each other are saying or describing the same phenomena, the same attributes, the same elements, it becomes like, a case of True Detective, right? Where, it begins to be way beyond coincidence, way beyond, not that I believe in coincidence, but you get what I'm saying. It's so synchronistic at a point that it suggests, and to a certain point, with enough of that kind of data and evidence, it's not even a suggestion. It's pure evidence of a black hole. It's pure evidence of, yes, there is, a or multiple forces um, concealing the truth of what we're going through, of what this reality is, of what our purpose and destiny is. It's the war between good versus evil. There's a million different ways to say it. You can look at it from the religious perspective. You can look at it from a conspiracy perspective. You study it from either perspective long enough, they overlap, and you realize they're basically saying the same thing, but from their own perspectives, which is exactly what I found as a kid when I was studying different cultures and religions and mythologies and cosmologies about the archetypes that they venerated with paganism, how it actually, really all paganism is ultimately the same template. It's based off of Nimrod and Semiramis, and other wiser people have pointed this out, discovered this before. So nothing I've discovered, I don't think, is anything new. Nothing new is under the sun, that old adage, right? So it's the continual rediscovery of truth. In the war between good and versus evil, a large part of it is uh, the fighting for the clarity of that truth. And then the evil dark forces are fighting for the confiscation and manipulation of the truth, to replace it in an Indiana Jones kind of way with their lies, right? So that's controlled opposition, that's disinformation, misinformation, right? The true versions of that, not the way the state or media will use it 99.9% of the time, because they'll always use that as justification. Well, see, the internet's the problem. It's full of conspiracy theories. We got to crack down on that, because they're using it. They're bending the truth or creating a lie to facilitate their own purpose with all this, right? And ultimately, I just pray to God to guide me with it all because I'm a mortal man. I'm fallible as much as anyone, and I'm just trying to get to the truth and to share my journey and whatnot with it. And then on my entertainment side, because I write scripts, I write stories, and I write comedy and I perform comedy. I do stand up. We've made sketches. We do a podcast. We do a lot of different things. Ultimately, is to still, even in my, when I'm doing comedic stuff, it's to help expose that. It's not so much that it's an agenda. It's that now entertainment is all falsehood. Storytelling is all falsehood, except, a few exceptions here and there with the rare gems that usually pop up in the independent entertainment space, or the occasional accidental, you know, thing that was unintentionally made well, that oozes out of the Hollywood studio system. So to me, people like me, artists like me, are not agenda driven anymore, I would argue less than the evil propagandists, because true artists are not trying to propagandize, even if they have an opinion, even if they have a bias, right? They are asking questions. They're shattering the illusion, while the illusionists want to perpetuate the illusion. See, so to me, it's not only correct or right or honorable to do what I'm doing and trying to do, and people like me and others who are way more successful at it. I could go on and on about those kinds of people. I talk about them all the time. Sam Hyde, of course, the great Sam Hyde. When I think of patron saints of comedy and truth, I think of Sam Hyde. I think of Tim Dillon. I think of Sam Tripoli. I think of Leonardo Joni, an actually funny female comedian, and so funny that I wouldn't even really, when talking about her, wouldn't go, oh, she's a female comedian. I'm like, oh, she's a comedian because she's earned that right. And that's just to show you that it's not about who you are; it's about what you say, what you do. You see, because the people like myself who judge based off of meritocracy are the real sane people, are the real truth fighters, are the real equal opportunists. If you're not opportunists, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, yeah, equal opportunities, I guess. I don't know. Um, and it's just funny to me to see the way everything gets manipulated. And oh, you can't say that you're a white guy. Oh, you can't say that you're a straight male. Oh, you can't say that. You can't say that because X, Y, and Z. Oh, so I can't say anything because I don't know, look like me. I went to a comedy store show. Oh, it's a school shooter. Oh, look, you're so anti-Semitic. What? Because of my face? That's pretty damn anti-Europa of you. If that's the game we're going to play. And that's the world we live in now, where it's not about truth. It's not about what you say or do even. It's about optics. It's about, ooh, I had a booker tell me once, oh, you remind me of Dennis Miller or a Fox News comedian or something like that, which is where he was going. He didn't say that term, the Fox News bit, but he definitely was implying that because you could tell he was a binary thinker. Oh, you're not on my side, so you must be on their side rather than who and what I really am, which is an independent truth seeker who's not loyal or allegiant to either side. And in this industry of entertainment, no matter what facet you're in, that doesn't get you very far if you don't play their games. They don't like it when you don't play their games. Because if you don't play their game, they can't control you because, of course, it's a rigged game. So the more you play into it, you can enjoy success, sure, but at the cost of your soul eventually. Right? That's where it's ultimately leading you towards. That's the goal of the mystery teachings. That's the goal of things MK Ultra, CIA type operations like Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard was, of course, worked for the CIA. You can look into that. That's very eye opening. So that's what I mean. Like nothing's real with our world. There is truth, there is reality beneath it, but it's caked over with these false illusions. And so that's the job of an artist, that's the job of a writer, that's the job of a thinker, philosopher, etc., is to actually penetrate the lies and go, hey, y'all are pretty fucked up right now. You might hate me for it. So it's not about being liked. And in that case, maybe that's not the job description. As far as what's available to the modern artist, and the increasingly infinite ways in which they figure out ways to demonetize you, debank you, censor you. Oh, we can't let your perspective grow and monopolize. And I've seen that with everything on this platform, to with YouTube, to Twitter, to including under Elon Musk's reign. Plenty of censorship under Elon Musk's reign. Don't let him fool you. You know, uh, that's what I mean. And it's they're so good at pushing people into sides, and then oh, how dare you disagree with me on this one thing? Now we're you must be on the other side. It's like, no, maybe you're just brainwashed too, because that's what they do. They control both sides. It's the black and white binary. It's polarization. These are ancient alchemical principles that they operate under. And not all those principles are inherently evil, by the way. And I'm not trying to defend the occult, and I'm not trying to defend alchemy or hermeticism or whatnot. What I'm trying to get at here is a lot of stuff that's done in evil ways is just principles and technology of the way the universe operates that they use maliciously. So it's like any tool. If a tool, a hammer, a sword, whatever, an axe is perhaps a better for this analogy here. Um, an axe can be used to chop wood and be productive. That's a good use for an axe. An axe can also be used for self-defense. That's a good use for an axe. An axe can also be used to, do some horror movie shit. You know what I mean? So it's not about the tool in most cases, I would say, as a general rule of thumb, as much as it is about the intent of the user. But there are definitely caveats, and I always, warn people, don't get involved with the occult, because I do think most people can't handle it. Even studying it from an academic perspective, I've talked about it before. I've had this experience with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So I caution people in the masses. And it makes me think of that quote from the Bible of "Do not cast pearls before swine." I don't think that's just referring to evil people as much as it is referring to anybody who's just truly ignorant or incapable of uh, accepting the responsibility of certain knowledge and what comes with that. It's like firearms. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment, but I also recognize, especially in the modern era, there's a lot of stupidity with such things because of the removal of responsibility from culture, the removal of morality and ethics. And I'm not saying that because of that I would accept any kind of limitation of the right to bear arms. But my point is that it's about the person behind the gun, behind the tool. And the same, I would say, in a lot of cases applies to these kinds of alchemical and whatnot hermetic type principles. I think, I've read a lot of Gnostic stuff over the years as part of my various self-education, let's call it. And the Gnostics have a lot of interesting things to say. I also disagree with a lot of things the Gnostics have to say. But it does, if you have a Christian upbringing at all, remind you of or any kind of biblical comparison while you're doing this, which is usually the way I recommend this to people. Root everything in the Bible, but also keep in mind that a lot of versions of the Bible are falsified, propagandized. Disney owns a version of the Bible where they remove certain pieces of scripture altogether. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of funny business going on. So what I do personally when I research stuff and as I contemplate things and decide what do I think of things, I stay open-minded. I do as much research as possible, and I root it from the Bible, and I root it from the spiritual or supernatural philosophy that I've kind of developed over the years, which God is the North Star of that. And then you compare as you're studying different cultures, different religions, and that's usually what you see is that Christianity is the only way that it explains the pagan world and the non-pagan, you know. And like I said, the template of the pagan world is encrypted, but once you decrypt it, it's actually very, very simple. It's like I said, it's the same structure: Nimrod and Semiramis, which is Osiris and Isis of the Egyptian pantheon, Zeus and Hera of the Greek, and on and on and on it goes. So there's really nothing new under the sun, especially in that department. It's just the variations of it. It's all the same, all paganism's reduced to the same kind of sex cult magic, occult magic operations stuff. A lot of that is very interestingly, when you look into the history of things like that, history of intelligence, I've talked about before, the history of the occult and esotericism, secret societies, the history of uh, propaganda, the history of psychological operations in general. Guys like Jay Dyer is who I would usually point to at that to get the hard data on, because he's actually gone through and can point you to the right books and whatnot. But a lot of my research has been very similar to guys like him and overlap with guys like him for the exact reason, because there is this awakening going on. And I don't use that in a new age sense, but a more practical sense of people waking up to, oh, this is what's going on in the world. This is what we're dealing with. This is a beast. And it is a beast. It's a beast system. It is all to build toward the inevitable, Orwellian and Babylonian world system of control, and on and on and on it goes. And maybe I'm a fool for trying to tell stories in a time like this, but it's what I'm suited for. It's what my gifts are, and so if nothing else, I'll give up the dream of writing scripts, even though I'm pretty decent at it, and just write stories instead and self-publish, and that's another avenue for me to go as well. But my point with sharing this journey is to shed light on the reality of this stuff, the reality of the supernatural nature of the universe, of Earth, of heaven, of hell, of all this stuff. I was talking about ayahuasca the other day, and how so many people celebrate. Oh, I went to Peru and I did this ceremony, and I experienced this thing or whatever. Ultimately you're opening doorways to things. Even if it's not inherently evil, which I think some things could be inherently evil, you are opening doorways to things. You have to be careful. It's the same way with esoteric and occult knowledge. Even if you're studying it from an academic perspective, it opens doorways that we do not fully understand. In the same way that symbols actually speak to an older part of our mind, to where it can communicate unconsciously or consciously, but in a different way than language directly uses, to transmit, in an almost telepathic way, information and eternal or ancient ideas. And in fact, that leads me back to my experience with the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is to this day the instinct I have, the gut intuition I have as to why I had the experience I did, was because of the exposure of those. And it's not that you can't look at anything Egyptian or pagan or whatever, and whatever, go with God. I think Christ can protect you from anything. But at the same time, you have to be careful, because the devil is very cunning, and it's very manipulative, and it's very seductive, and it's very easy to fall down a rabbit hole. Usually rabbit holes are good to go down, in my experience, but I guess what I'm saying is that it's a very fine line. It's a very fine road. It's a very difficult journey, even for the most intelligent person I could imagine, which isn't me. And so that's why I feel like I have to put that PSA out there for those. It's kind of like Sir Christopher Lee, who played Sauron in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, directed by Peter Jackson. He talked about his fascination with the occult, and how he got to a point where he realized, like, oh, this is basically, don't go down that road, you'll lose your mind. And I do think that's true, because that's what the devil does. He combines good with evil. The fallen angels came down onto Mount Hermon or Mount Ararat. I believe it's the same mountain, and just with different names, but it's the same place from different cultures. And in every religion and culture has some, the Egyptians have something there. Every religion you can imagine and culture basically has some kind of little site on that mountain, as I understand it. And that's where they made the deal. The 200 fallen angels bound themselves on Mount Hermon, Mount Ararat, to take the daughters of the wives of men and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's how you get the Nephilim bloodlines. That's the origin of witchcraft and sorcery, necromancy, pharmakia, which of course is modern medicine. It's the same principle, the cutting of roots and whatnot, basically to treat the symptoms rather than to treat the cause, and on it goes. You see, so all of it can be traced back pretty cleanly and well when you look at it from this perspective. And I've been talking about this particular perspective on these kinds of topics for since I was a teenager. And it's so funny to me seeing how many other people have ran with it and talked about it or came to the same conclusions of their own fruition. And I decided, at one point I used to think I was being stolen from, but I also think, like I said before, there's nothing new under the sun. And we are in a special time when a lot of people are waking up. So I think it's inevitable to have that parallel thinking, which is what I decided ultimately it had to be in most cases was parallel thinking. But I've also had other things like jokes, like even things that are outside of this, like bits. All of a sudden, a comedian goes on Joe Rogan and says the exact bit I did on stage a few months ago. That's interesting. They have a successful career. I'm still struggling to climb my way up the ladder, So it's an endless fight with all this stuff to get your work seen, to get any kind of credit for it. And ultimately, I don't know if you can worry about credit in the modern world. You can only worry about, do I have a net effect that's positive? Unfortunately. It's unfortunate and it's immoral, don't get me wrong, but it is the kind of case that we find ourselves in, or the situation that we find ourselves in. And, I've lost plenty of friends over the years. People, I'm sure, think I'm nuts or this or that. Really, they're retarded and don't know jack shit, and people run from anything. It's I get a vibe from you kind of shit. Not actual vibe shit. It's you're asking questions and thinking and you have sentient thought. You know what I mean? There's an old quote from some Greek philosopher that talks about this, that basically those who think for themselves scare the crowd, scare the masses, because one, you have the audacity to think for yourself and they don't know how to do that. So that's terrifying. But then it's like, well, this is the way conspiracy theorists in general have been treated. Oh, well, because what you're saying would be so outlandish if it were true, or so, not even fantastical, but so world-changing and earth-shaking if it was true for me to accept that I have to attack you to defend my own worldview. So there's a lot of that going on, too. And it's unfortunate because ultimately people like me have to, every day I come closer to understanding the whole what carrying your cross really means in this life. And, essentially we're in the same boat as Christ in a lesser way of, they will mock you, they will ridicule you, you will be spat upon, they will hate you. It's not because you weren't a friend. It's not because you weren't fighting for truth. It's not because you were a liar. It's not because you were a deceiver. It's not because you were anything but being honest. And that's the problem, you see, because they don't mind if you're a liar. They don't mind if you're a deceiver. They mind if you tell the truth. That's when you're a problem. And in the modern day with AI, it's, well, okay, you're going to be a truth seeker. You decided that. Well, we'll keep you in your little bubble, right? I was just talking to a friend of mine about this. We'll keep you in your little AI bubble, social media bubble. You can tell other people that are as, in their perspective, from their worldview, unhinged as you. That's fine. You guys can be schizophrenic together, right? The whole Reddit atheist type vibe, the mods, oh God, those people, you know what I mean? Because they're the new priest class as much as the modern scientists, quote unquote, as much as the modern doctors, quote unquote. They're the new priest class, or the modern psychologists, you know what I mean? It's, you must have some condition of the blah, blah, blah. It's not about the truth. It's not, hey, could he be right? Could he be telling the truth? Has he seen something? Has he experienced something? We saw this with UFO cases and all this stuff. And only now is mankind really beginning to realize that, those people weren't lying. They were telling the truth and were actually at war with an enemy that is spiritually demonic. Even the parts of it that are agents, that are human agents, they're still agents on behalf of a supernatural demonic destiny, basically, that they're worshiping and fulfilling. And in exchange, they get the material possessions, they get fame and fortune, they get their projects greenlit, they get everything. As long as you're willing to compromise where the cult needs you to compromise, because you still have to serve their agenda, right? In exchange for your soul, you'll get all the worldly pleasures, the worldly gains. it's the Faustian Pact. It's a story as old as time, and it's so funny and interesting seeing it playing out in real life. It's horrifying as well, but there is a certain humor, and laughing with God kind of perspective to look at it. And um, I was told that once when I was praying. He who laughs with God, which I always like that. I always like that as an epithet because it's kind of like saying, well, it is saying it's the guy who gets it, who can see beyond the chaos, who sees through the chaos and sees the order of it, and how it is the unseen realms, the good war of good versus evil, once again fighting out and playing out over time. And all these topics I think are brutally important to talk about, especially in the times that we're living in. And yet I always find myself feeling kind of crazy for wanting to talk about it. Not because that's how I feel about it, but I can tell because I have self-awareness and I've experienced this firsthand. So many people, most people, are so indoctrinated, so brainwashed. They want to cling to materialism, atheism, nihilism, all of these kinds of philosophical concepts for reasons that are really beyond me, rather than looking at the data, looking at the facts. You know what I mean? And even if it's just funny to me that it's, well, you don't believe in science, all that shit. Like, listen, okay. Um, it's just so pathetic. The lies, the manipulation, and that's all it is. And it's done by the highest authority. So, of course, people, well, the experts said that, the authority said that, but that case was ruled a suicide, so surely Epstein killed himself, right? And now with AI, it's like, yeah, if you couldn't believe anything before, just you wait. You know what I mean? It's really, we're in those times now, So I say go with God, get back to nature. That's kind of my resounding message, find God again, find nature again, build your way out of the matrix system by building your own community. It's really the only way forward. Self-sufficiency and independence and community on the small scale is really the only way I see any kind of surviving this, um, let alone fixing it. I don't even know if you can fix it, to be honest. I think we're truly, like I said, there's forces at work here that are bigger than all of us. God wins in the end, as Alistair Williams, one of my favorite comedians, often says. I need to check in on him. Actually, I haven't seen his uh, his channel in a while, which I'm sure is for very concerted reasons. It's because guys like him tell the truth, and you can't be funny and tell the truth because then you're charismatic, and if you're charismatic telling the truth, oh, that's a problem. Hey, now, don't be charismatic. Don't get an audience telling the truth. That could be a problem for us. You see, so that's the endless game that we're all in. That's why I don't worry about view counts as much as it is irritating, and whatnot. And by the way, my YouTube counts have been for years censored, and you name it, they've done it to me. All my accounts, social media accounts, are censored massively. But I know this is probably anybody listening worth a damn who gives a shit. You've experienced the same things if you're a creator or post anything or whatever. Now that I think of myself as that, because I hate that word, it's just as bad as influencer. I don't hate the word as much as the way it's been used, right? You can, in a clinical term, sure, yeah, we're all creators, we're all co-creators of reality and all that shit, right? In a small way, not in the occult sense of, oh, I can become God. Oh, wow, I meditated long enough, I can see the, archons or whatever. Um, no, there's only one God, and through him you can do miraculous things, but ultimately it's his miracles, it's his magic, it's his mystery, it's his wonders. Um, we just get to be along for the ride, and we can co-create to a small degree. I do think there's a purpose in our living. There is agency, there is free will, but there is also destiny. All of these things can be true. People always want to fall into binary thinking once again. Oh no, there's free will or there's destiny. You can't have both. It's like no. Archetypes are a perfect way to explain that. We all embody an archetype, whether we realize it or not. And the consequence of which archetype you embody is, you know what I mean? Like, so it's all fundamentally part of reality. In fact, I am working on a book about archetypes and storytelling and how they're connected to metaphysics, the supernatural, all of this kind of stuff, because there needs to be a work done uh, that explains this more coherently than I feel like I could. I mean, hopefully you got it just then when I explained it. That should, you know, get some neurons firing. But I do think somebody needs to write a book explaining this because it's very true. As much as it is in fiction, as well as reality. You know, fiction is a mirror to reality, and in fact, in many cases, especially in the modern world with lawsuits and whatnot, fiction is the only way in which you can parody, satirize, or you just get the truth out by directly stating it. Because you have the legal caveat. It's like, well, I published it as fiction, so maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know, um, and that's unfortunate. The work of a comedian who embodies what I'm talking about and what I aim for as well, who's also a patron saint of comedy, Trevor Moore of The Whitest Kids You Know, who died under mysterious circumstances. His sketches are very interesting. Very interesting. And I watched him when I was a kid. I loved his work. Maybe that's part of why I wanted to go into comedy for all. But he does an Illuminati sketch. He does a sketch on, as far as like selling your soul to, hey, hey, I'm here, and the guy takes off his mask and it's like that dude he's been in a million things, but I can only place him from Sky High. He's like the principal or something from Sky High, or one of the faculty from Sky High, and he kind of looks like kind of small, diminutive kind of dude, always kind of funny, and he's a good actor, and I love anytime I see him, he makes me laugh, so I think he's great, but, that kind of a thing, he's in the sketch, and there's a million sketches like that they have out there that are, Trevor Moore did a sketch, which I'm sure you've seen, very famous sketch, where he goes in and does the, he's teaching, Trevor Moore is going to be the kindergartner teacher for the day, and he talks about the moon landing, and we didn't really go there, so you can't really be an astronaut, Then he brings up 9/11. It's really, really funny, but it's also using the truth as a vehicle for comedy, because you can use the truth for comedy in order to discredit the truth, which is what the propagandists do, or you can do what Trevor Moore did and many others, Sam Hyde, many others, where you use the truth as the vehicle for humor, but it's to mock not the truth, but it's to mock the illusion. That's the brilliance of Trevor Moore. That's the brilliance of Sam Hyde. That's the brilliance of Tim Dillon. That's the brilliance of Sam Tripoli, so many people who I do have legitimate, deep, genuine respect for. I went to a Sam Tripoli show that I still find it so funny because he was staring at me because I walked in late, so that was on me. Traffic was bad. I didn't plan well. I'm not the best planner sometimes with stuff. And it was last minute. I was like, oh, he's got his Comedy Chaos show. I got to go. So I went, and I was glad I did. And I can't speak enough praise about Sam or Comedy Chaos. I think it's a great showcase. Like anything, you don't always agree with every comedian that goes up, but he puts on a good show, is what I'm saying. And he picks good people overall. And, I can't say enough good things about him, his show. Tinfoil Hat, Broken Simulation, all those things. He's a fighter for the truth. That's why I respect him. You know what I mean? Even if he wasn't funny at all, which I'm not saying that at all, because he is very funny. But I'm just saying, like, the merit of his work morally and for getting to the truth, I can't sing his praises enough. And like I said, with all these guys, it's the case. Tim Dillon, especially on the front lines of, he was made for the times we're living in more than almost any of those guys, I would say too. As far as thank God we have people like him doing what he's doing. It's really beautiful, but it's a war. That's why the culture war to me matters way more than any kind of political victory. The political victory is important. Don't get me wrong, but But I doubt we'll really see a political victory that's moral and spiritual and what we truly, truly need comprehensively. You got to take your wins where you can get them, but also, recognize that, we live in a fallen world. Man is fallen. Any and all institutions are fallen, especially government, especially education, especially medicine, especially media, news, entertainment, you know what I mean? Because it's literally manufactured by, the deep state, the Pentagon. The Pentagon makes movies, you know what I mean? You can't make you want to have access to our Air Force Base? Guess what? You have to sign a contract with us where we get to veto it. So that we always look like the good guys, And I say this with respect to our nation's military, but to the men and women who are in it, not to in the same way like, oh, well, what do you think about any agency or group? It's like, well, I think, in a lot of cases, it's well-meaning people who comprise the workforce. It's the evil, the sins fall mainly largely on the people at top on the top of the hierarchy, because psychopaths tend to climb to the top of hierarchies anyway. Those are the ones whose the sin is laid bare on. Just like how in religion and Christianity and whatnot, sin isn't ultimately attributed to man or even to Eve, even though I like to joke about that a lot. Uh, as much as it is, it's not that we're guilt free, but the point is that the larger sin, of course, falls on the devil, the fallen angels, the demonic forces, the evil forces, powers, the principalities, etc., the thrones, powers, principalities, wickedness in high and spiritual places. You see, okay, it's all that same stuff, and so it's just interesting because we like to think of in the modern world, oh, we don't believe in any of that old world shit, and our technology is better than the old world shit. We couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I'm not the first to say this, but there's an account on Twitter you'll see a lot that will talk about this, about how no, we're the ones living in the dark ages, and I truly do believe that. I think we're living in the dark ages way more than 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. The further back in time, the more organized and civilized we really truly were in regards to beauty, truth, intelligence, wisdom. All these things actually fueled culture, and it's because and that's not in every culture, by the way. That's in the cultures that revered God and revered truth and genuinely tried to help its people. When science and invention and philosophy and all these things were about suited towards getting to the truth, rather than in medicine, versus nowadays it's about to poison, propagandize, brainwash, enslave, and kill. It is a death cult that we're battling. Okay. And, so go with God, create something, write the book, make the movie, make the short film, make the sketch, make the podcast, make the invention. If you can invent, Godspeed. I don't know if I'm quite the inventor type. Maybe I could be if I tried, but I know what I'm good at. I know what cards I've been dealt, and I'm going to use my skills and tools to the best of my ability, to awaken minds and to help fight fight the good fight. It's like the old Irish expression, fight the good fight, keep the faith, you know, because that's the truth of it, is that that's what it's about at the end of the day. It's about keeping the faith, fighting the good fight, and seeing it through to the end, don't you know? So hopefully that was interesting or thought provoking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Share, like, etc., etc. Uh, you know, I might be crazy, but I'm not wrong.